Okay, so as we all know, the Kabbalists throughout the generations, and of course the Rav made it very clear that this Shabbat is a very important Shabbat. The Rav told us it's a Shabbat of healing, but as we know, it's even more than that. It's a Shabbat of immortality. And what's exciting is that besides the fact that we know that there is this light available to us on Shabbat, the fact that we talk about, the fact that we study about these concepts make it more possible for each of us individually, maybe more important, makes it more possible for the world to begin becoming connected to the possibility, the concept, the reality of immortality. Because we know at the center of this week's portion is the soul that is called Pinchas. As the Kabbalists tell us, Pinchas became Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, one of the few people whose body and soul remain completely intact. Death did not touch Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet. And in order to, again, gain more understanding of what we can start doing to lead ourselves, and through that, again, the world towards that reality, it's important to delve a little bit deeper to understand what was it about Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, and his life and what he did that made it possible for him to achieve the level of immortality which he achieved. So the portion begins with a very important phrase. The Creator says, that the Creator gives Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, I give him Kuna, the priesthood forever. But more important than that, it says he gets the gift of Shalom, the gift of peace. What is the gift of peace? What's the spiritual secret of the gift of peace? So, it says in the Torah, Et Briti Shalom, the Creator says, I've given Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, Pinchas, who became Elijah, the covenant of peace. The Kabbalist and commentator, the Sforno, writes the following words, which we have to understand, but hold within them the secret of peace and the secret of immortality. V'zeh leshono, this is what the Sforno says. Et Briti Shalom, when it says in this week's portion that because of the action of Pinchas, where he was completely selfless and gave up of himself completely, the Creator gave him the covenant or the promise of peace. It says, Briti Shalom mi malach hamavet, that the gift that Eliyahu Navi received on this Shabbat, and that's why again this is the Shabbat of immortality, was that the Creator gave him the gift of peace and freedom from the angel of death. Kinyan oseh shalom miromav, and this is what it means, peace. Peace means a person who is completely detached from the angel of death in all areas. So so that's the gift. He received, we understand that when it says shalom, peace means immortality. It means the separation from the angel of death. But how, practically, again, how did he do it? So he says, the Sforno says, Omnam ha'hefsed lo yikre. Why do we lose? Why is there loss? Either in this world while we're here, why do we lose things? Why does death happen? What allows the entry of the force of death? Ela besibat hitnagdut ha'ofchim. He says here words again which we'll have to understand. He says when there is a battle between opposing forces within the individual, when there is a battle of opposing forces within the individual, that's what allows death in, that's what allows end to come in, that's what allows loss to come in. That kavana. So one of the Kabbalah says, what does the Sforno mean when he says that what allows death to enter is misibat ha'ofchim, when there's a battle between opposing forces within the individual. Kisibat hamavet. Again, what is the cause of death? What is the cause of death, of all death? Hu al yedei hitnagdut ha'ofchim arba yesodot sheba'adam einam beshalom yachdav b'mezeg hashaveh. So here he says something which we have to understand. In the book of formation, the Sefer Yetzirah, Abraham tells us there's 4 yesodot. There's 4 foundational elements that make up everything. That make up the universe and that make up the individual. Esh, ruach, mayim, ve'afar. Esh is fire, ruach is, mayim is water, ruach is air or spirit, and afar is earth. These four elements make up the individual, make up the person. And now these four elements are not just physical elements, more importantly they have a spiritual DNA. And we'll talk about each one of the four to give us a basic understanding, although if you use your mind to understand, you'll begin to realize how they manifest. So Esh, fire, the element of fire, represents excitement, represents the force of that a person uses to awaken either great desire or great movement. Esh, fire, is great movement. Again, as we know, that can be used for positive, that can be used for negative. Mayim, water, represents flowing, represents sharing, which again can be used for the positive, can be used for the negative. Ruach, air or spirit, represents the ability to both be detached from the physical world, to leave things quickly, to not be delving deeply into things, and of course that can be used for the positive, for the negative. A person delves into his problems, that's negative. A person delves into spiritual understanding, that's positive. So again, to be clear, each one of these four elements, which make up our spiritual essence, can be used for positive and negative. Afar, earth, represents doing things slowly or being lazy. And again, laziness can be positive or negative. Laziness for spiritual work obviously is negative. Laziness when it comes to fulfilling our selfish desire to receive for the self alone is positive. We are made up of these four elements. Esh, ruach, mayim, ve'afar, fire, water, wind, and earth. Each one of them has positive, each one of them has negative. The perfect person, the perfected person, has all four of them in exact equilibrium. Doesn't use fire for negative, uses fire and excitement for positive. Doesn't use sharing or giving for negative, only uses it for positive. Exactly in balance. Doesn't use the spirit, doesn't use the air to leave things on which one should dwell on, and uses it to leave things where one should not dwell. Afar uses laziness or being brought down for positive and not for negative. Those are the four elements that make up the individual. And now we understand. He says, Sibat HaMavet, what causes death? What causes death? As we know, as Rav Asher makes clear, death is not a moment, it is an accumulation of moments. So what type of accumulation of moments creates death? על ידי התנגדות ההופכיים ארבע יסודות שבאדם אינם בשלום יחדיו במזג השווה. When the four elements within the individual are not balanced, a person maybe gets too excited about everything, then he ruins the equilibrium of his body and soul. A person who's lazy in all things, he ruins the equilibrium of the body. Every decision and action that is not balanced within the four elements, that brings one of the four elements off its balance, is one more step towards death. When it says about Eliyahu and Elijah the prophet that the Creator gave him the gift of peace, what does it mean? The Creator gave him, he earned it, but he received the ability to always maintain balance of all the four elements within him, and therefore death never touched him. Because again, now we understand, death comes from accumulation of actions that are not balanced with the four elements. So, before we go further, and it's important that we do delve further, this concept really should begin shaping our lives. We all have moments, again, whether it's with the element of fire, whether it's the element of earth, where we feel right now either something's happening or we're making a decision that is not balanced within either one of the four elements. Now, so most of us realize it's not right. Let's say you have a spoiled child, to just give him, right? So that's using the element of water, not balanced, right? So you just give and give and give. But you understand, it's not just that you're doing something that you shouldn't do. You're doing something that's not good for your child. You're actually ruining, chas v'shalom, your own equilibrium. And that action actually brings you one step closer to death. We all know that you shouldn't use excitement to hurt somebody else. You shouldn't use excitement to do something very selfish, only for yourself alone. And so, but it's not just that it's not the good thing to do. It's that when you break the equilibrium, or when you live out of equilibrium in the element of fire, which is where excitement and movement comes from, then chas v'shalom, each one of those actions, each one of those decisions turns the four elements out of balance, and when the four elements are out of balance, that's one more step towards chas v'shalom death. Afal, when a person's lazy. So everybody knows it's not good to be lazy. But if you realize that, if you looked at the earth meter of your being, you want to be in the middle. If you're too lazy, it's not just that you're a lazy person, it's not good, you want to change that, but that the meter staying there actually is one step closer to death, because you're not leaving balance within your four elements. Of course, on the other side, if you're not using laziness to take down, let's say, anger, or take down actions of the desire to receive for the self alone, also again, it's not balanced. So for every element, and this is beautiful when you understand this on a deep level, there's three positions. There's the center, which is exactly where you want to be, and there's the extreme. So in the case of fire, the center is where you use anger when it's right, and you use excitement when it's right, and you don't use it when it's wrong. That's the perfect balance. When a person gets angry easily, so his fire element is off balance to the right. When a person never gets angry, even when he should, then the fire element is all the way to the end. So for each element, there's one position you want to be in, which is the central position, and there's the extremes, the right or the left, where the person is not using the element properly. And again, most important, it's not just that these are things you don't want to do because they're not right, or they're not helping you, they're not growing. It's that every action of lack of equilibrium of any of the four elements is one action that is closer to death. Because death, and this is again such a fundamental and important understanding, death is an accumulation of actions that were done through the equilibrium of the four elements that make up both your physical and spiritual being. Thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them, eventually the entire four elements of the individual, physical and spiritual, off balance, and that is what death is. Peace, now we understand the secret of peace. And that's why it says, and Rav Ashlag speaks about this at length, there is no vessel that can take in any blessing except peace. What does peace mean? Peace is when the individual is able to balance each one of his four elements. When you live in peace, you are a vessel for blessings. When you live in peace, when your four elements are in equilibrium, you are able to at least be going towards immortality, able to go towards the removal of the force of death from the individual. Very important. And again, I want to read this again because this is so important. And again, as I said, if you really understand this, it gives you a new perspective about how we need to live our lives. Again, so today somebody did something that got you really angry. We all know it's not good to be angry, but it's more scary than that. If I allow my anger, which comes from the element of fire, to go to the extreme, chas v'shalom, that action is bringing me towards death. So it's not whether it's good or right or wrong to be angry. It's I don't want to allow my fire element, one of my four elements, to be off balance, but chas v'shalom, those are actions that leads to death. I don't want to share when I shouldn't share because that will put my water element out of equilibrium, and the chas v'shalom is an action towards death. I don't want to be lazy when I shouldn't be, because that brings my earth element off balance. So it's not just that these aren't positive, you shouldn't do this, you should change. Understand that death comes from an accumulation of those actions when either any one of the four elements is used in the extreme degree, not balanced. Ki sibat hamavet hu al yedei hitnagdut hofchim. When the four elements that make up the individual are not balanced, those are actions of death. And this is why it says about Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, Briti hayta ito hachayim v'hashalom. The Creator says He has received the covenant or the strength for life and peace. Now we understand, because those are dependent on each other. There is no life without peace between the four elements. And when you have peace with the four elements, you have life. If there's one verse, and I often think in this way, if there's one verse you want to have in your mind this entire week and this Shabbat, we want to merit the gift of Achayim v'Hashalom, life and peace. Peace, we understand now the secret means that when the elements within the individual, or he or she fights, again, to be clear, all of us, now you want to take this time to really assess this, all of us are living imbalanced. Some of us are more imbalanced when it comes to fire, some of us are more imbalanced when it comes to earth, some of us are more imbalanced when it comes to water, some of us are more imbalanced when it comes to air. Each one of us should assess and realize that if we want Briti Haita Ito HaChaim VeHaShalom, if we want to merit this Shabbat to receive the gift of life, the gift of life only comes with the gift of peace. When you are able to fight for the balance of the four elements within you, HaChaim VeHaShalom, life and peace. וזה שכתוב שפנחס זה אליהו שיחיה לעולם, when it said that Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, merited to live forever, it's because he received the gift of peace, equilibrium within his four elements. Now with this, we can understand there's a beautiful section in the Talmud, in Brachot. Rav Ashlag speaks about it, when he speaks about Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, coming to the Brit. It says the following, and now we can understand how beautiful this is, how powerful this is. And again, there's two reasons I'm excited to share this and to speak about this. One is simply, the more we speak about immortality, the more we speak about the secrets of immortality, the more that light is revealed in the world. So it's worth talking about it, even if it doesn't practically change our lives. But more than that, this deepening of our understanding of the secrets of immortality also hopefully will change our actions and will change our lives. So there's two very powerful things that are occurring as we study these concepts. It says in the Talmud in Brachot, it says each one of the angels, it says he flies in different ways. It says, for instance, Michael Be'achad, the angel Michael flies with one, it would seem like he doesn't have to stop, he's from one place to the other. Gavriel B'shtayim, Gabriel, the angel Gabriel has to stop twice, it seems. Eliyahu Be'arba, it says that Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet, flies with 4. Umalach HaMavet B'shmone, and the angel of death flies with 8. So when you literally read this, that portion of the Talmud, it sounds like, again, it's just telling us how they fly or how they get from one place to the other. Elijah the prophet stops 4 times, the angel of death stops 8 times. But now we understand this, and it's a beautiful, beautiful understanding. We just learned there's 4 elements. What's the secret of Eliyahu Navi, of Elijah the prophet? All 4 elements were in their perfect middle ground. When it says the angel of death flies in 8, as we said earlier, if each one of the 4 elements has a perfect position, the central position, not too angry, but using anger when necessary, or excitement when it's necessary, that's the element of fire. The element of water, sharing when it's right, not sharing when it's wrong, the perfect position. The element of air, getting out of, not dwelling on things when it's right, dwelling on things when you should. That's the perfect position of the element of air. And the element of earth, being lazy for negative things and fighting laziness for positive things. That's the perfect position, each one of the 4. And Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, the reason he merited Briti Haita Ito HaChaim VeHaShalom, life and peace, life is because each one of those 4 were in perfect position of peace. Now, if there are 4 elements, and each one of the 4 has a perfect position, each one of the 4 has the wrong position. So if the element of fire has the perfect middle position, where you don't want to be is either on the right or the left, any one of the extremes. Too excitable, too angry all the time, never angry for the right things. You never want to be in either of those 2 positions. So each one of the 4 elements has the perfect position, that's 4. That's the secret of Eliyahu Navi. Each one of the 4 elements has the negative positions, the extreme right or the extreme left. So the angel of death, what's his power? Whenever you are either in extreme right or left of any of the 4 elements, 2 times 4 is 8. The extreme elements of each one of the 4 is 8. So when it says Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, is 4, he's the secret of 4. He's the secret of the perfect position of each one of the 4 elements. Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, what's his power? When you are living in either one of the extreme positions, either right or left of center, for each one of the 4 elements, 8. And that's a secret when it says in the Talmud, Eliyahu Navi Be'arba, Elijah the prophet, his secret, and the secret of life and peace, is when the 4 elements are being lived in their perfect position. The angel of death, his power is when you're living in the extremes. And therefore, Malach HaMavet B'shmone. Therefore, the angel of death, his secret is the secret of 8. I will just read a little bit more of Sibat Hamita Hema Shmona Arachim Hakitzim. The force of death is when actions of the individual are done on either the extreme of the 4 elements. V'zeu malach hamavet b'shmona, and that's what it means when it says the angel of death, his force comes from 8. Sheshmona arachim akitzim hema sibot hamita. That death, the force of death the individual brings into his life, and chas v'shalom, as unfortunately, if we're honest with ourselves, we realize almost every single day we're living unbalanced of the 4. And therefore the first thing we want to receive on this Shabbat, Briti hayta ito hachayim ve'ashalom, the gift of life comes from the gift of peace. To start fighting for a balanced one of the 4 of each one of our 4 elements. Very, very important, both secret and a very important understanding. There's another secret that Eliyahu Navi Elijah the prophet teaches us, and it's something I've spoken about in previous years, but there's something new which I think is important both to understand and to push for. It says, as we mentioned in the beginning of this week's portion, this action of Pinchas, who gave up completely of himself, the Creator says, "Lachen emor lo hineni noten lo et briti shalom." I give him the gift of peace, and now we understand that the gift of peace represents the gift of life. It says in the Targum, in the translation from the Yamuka, Ben Uziel, what did the Creator give him? He gave him, in this point, in this moment, the gift or the job of being the heralder, the one who will announce, the one who will help bring about the final redemption. Why did the Creator give him that gift now? So, it says, and we've spoken about this a few times, this concept that a person is in this world to work, to do his or her spiritual job. In this moment in the life of Pinchas, he completed his job. His complete giving up of his desire to receive for the self alone brought him to the state, this is why he was in this world, he completed his task. So the Creator said there's two things that can happen now. A person who's finished his job in this world, there's no point for him to be here. What can I give him? What can I give Pinchas, the Creator thinks to himself, that not only will allow him to remain here alive. We know, for instance, about King David. It says about King David that he saw that he didn't have a lot of work to do. He started taking upon himself more spiritual work, so he has a reason to stay into this world. Eventually, King David died. We know this also about Jacob, that when he fought with the angel and he beat him, his job finished, and therefore he got a new name, which means a new task. Eventually, though, although the Zohar says no, it's possible that Jacob also left this world. We know, for instance, Rav Ashlag. Rav Ashlag tells us that when he was in Poland, he came to his teacher at the time, and his teacher said, "You've done everything, you finished all your work here in Poland. You have two possibilities: either leave this world now, or take on new work, go to the land of Israel. There, you'll receive a whole new level of work." He went to the land of Israel, but he eventually also, Rav Ashlag, left this physical world. So the Creator is thinking to himself, "What can I give Pinchas that he can live forever?" So it says that Eliyahu, or Elijah the prophet, who we know Pinchas became Eliyahu, it says that his name is written, and it's not written with all the letters. That Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet, b'chamisha mekomot Eliyahu chaser vav. 5 times in the prophets, when the name Eliyahu is mentioned, it's missing the letter vav. And the Maharal, the great Kabbalist, says, Kavanat HaMidrash, the meaning of the Midrash when it says that the name Eliyahu is written missing, which seems to indicate something lacking within Eliyahu. Ki Eliyahu lo nivra rak ligo'ol et Yisrael. Elijah the prophet, the Creator, in this week's portion gives him a new job. His job is to bring the redemption. V'kol zman she'ein Eliyahu gomer davar bezeh, hinehu nechshav kechaser. And until the final redemption, Eliyahu has not done his task. So when the Creator is thinking, what gift can I give Pinchas to allow him to live forever? I can give him another important task, and he'll live another 5 years, another 10 years, another 40 years. But eventually he'll have to leave this world because I know him, he'll do the spiritual work. What task can I give Eliyahu, can I give Pinchas, where he'll never be able to die? If he takes upon himself the task of bringing the final redemption, then he has to live forever. So that when the Creator says to Pinchas in this week's portion, "You've done this amazing job," he's telling him, "Listen, you have 2 choices. You've done everything your soul came to this world to do. You can leave. Or, I'm going to give you not just a task, like King David got a new task, or even Jacob, Yaakov got a new task, or Rav Ashla got a new task, where at some point they finished that task as well and left this physical world. The Creator comes to Eliyahu and he says, I'm going to give you the task of bringing the final redemption. If you accept the task of bringing the final redemption, and you focus your entire life in bringing the final redemption, you can never die. So what we learn from here, and this is, I think some of us know this concept, but I want to point out the difference between how one accepts this task. It means that in order for a person to be moving him or herself towards immortality, or at least moving ourselves closer to that, that is dependent on how much we take upon ourselves the task of being the final redemption. Also, one can say, look, if a person's a chevra, if a person's teaching Kabbalah, if a person's a student of Kabbalah, we're all in some way involved in bringing the final redemption. That's not good enough. It's not that the Creator said to Eliyahu Navi, to Pinchas, who became Elijah the prophet, also take upon this task. Spend some of your time on this, you'll live forever. No. The reason why Pinchas lives forever is because from morning to night, there's nothing else that he is focused on except what he can do to bring the final redemption. It's not, again, if Pinchas would have said to the Creator, okay, I'll spend even an important spiritual work, I'll spend most of my day helping people and sharing, doing actions of sharing, and the rest of the day on finding ways to bring the final redemption. He wouldn't have lived forever. It's because he took upon himself solely to focus his entire being on bringing the final redemption. That's why he lives forever. Obviously, what we want to receive from this, because all of us want to at least be on the path towards immortality, the more an individual makes his task, but not just 5% of my time, 10% of my time. And again, you have to be careful, because even the spiritual work that we do isn't always necessarily focused on bringing the final redemption. A person can even open up the Zohar and connect to the Zohar, because he or she needs a blessing in this, or he or she needs assistance in that. And I'm not saying that's not positive, it's all positive, it all reveals light, but those aren't the actions that bring a person towards immortality, or at least allows him to step closer towards immortality. When a person opens up the Zohar and says, yes, I also need this assistance or that assistance, but the real reason why I'm connecting to the Zohar now is because I want to bring the light of immortality to the world, I want to bring the Gemara Tikkun, the end of the correction, then you've taken yourself a step closer towards the gift of Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, the gift of immortality. And therefore, again, the Creator came to Pinchas, and he comes to us on this Shabbat. And he says, listen, there is this possibility. We know that immortality for everybody will only occur when there's a critical mass of people doing this work. But each one of us individually is also responsible to bring ourselves and to bring the world closer. The more we make, and again, we're not meant to be completely righteous, where we're like Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet spends 100% of his energy and time and effort and focus only on bringing the final redemption. But from wherever we are, even in our spiritual work, and certainly in other things that we do, we need to grow. We need to grow that focus, because that percentage of focus is that percentage of life that we have. Because everything that we have in life, to the degree that it is connected to the final redemption, to that degree it has the light of the final redemption. And even Chas v'Shalom, if we don't bring the totality of that light, it at least connects it more. So I use an example. So a person has a gift, whether it's, if it's money, if it's children, if it's wisdom. To the degree that the individual desires, but truly desires, to attach that gift to the goal of bringing the final redemption, to that degree he injects within that gift now, in the exile, in the darkness, with a little bit more light of the final redemption, with a little bit more light that doesn't end. Now, you don't do that completely, Chas v'Shalom, eventually it will end, but now at least it has more chiyut, it has more of the light of the immortality, it has more of the light of the final redemption. And therefore what we need to do, and this is the gift again, we start from the extreme. The Creator comes to Pinchas and he says, listen, do you want to live forever? Pinchas says yes. The Creator says, there's one thing I need you to do then. I need you to dedicate your entire being, your entire life forever. And it's interesting, because it seems like, Chas v'Shalom, if Eliyahu today woke up this morning and he said, you know what, I only want to invest 90% of my time in bringing the final redemption, Chas v'Shalom, maybe he won't continue on living. But Pinchas took upon himself the responsibility. He said, 100% of my time, 100% of my effort, 100% of everything that I am is only going to be focused on bringing the final redemption. To that degree, the Creator says, then you'll never die. We're not meant to be Eliyahu Navi yet. But for whatever degree we are, this Shabbat, if you want to be able to draw more light of immortality to everything in your life, push the focus on bringing the final redemption in everything that you do. Whether it's wisdom that you have, again, whether it's money that you have, whether it's children that you have, every gift that you have, if you want to inject it, and that's why, again, it's another concept, but it says, Shetig'aleni od begaluti, which means that even in the time before immortality comes, I can inject more light of immortality in my blessings. And that's what we can do on the Shabbat. So there's two, as we learned, there's two gifts available to us on Shabbat, the Shabbat. One is to begin touching true immortality. And that comes with, as we said, fighting for the equilibrium in our four elements. But the second part, which is important as well, is to begin drawing down the light of immortality into everything that exists, even within this not yet finished world, not yet complete world. And that's maybe easier, but also a gift of this Shabbat. I just want to share two more stories. It says, Imo shel Rabbi Tarfon yarda letoch hatzera b'Shabbat. It says in the Talmud in Yerushalmi that the mother of Rabbi Tarfon went down on Shabbat into her garden. V'halach Rabbi Tarfon v'hiniach shtei yadav tachat parsotea. And Rabbi Tarfon, as she was walking, would put his hands on the floor, and she would step on his hands. And every time she stepped, he would move his hands so that her feet don't touch the ground. V'hayta mahalechet alehen ad shehigia lemitata. And Rabbi Tarfon's mother was walking on his hands until she came to her bed. Pa'am achat chala, so Rabbi Tarfon became ill. V'nichnesu chachamim levakro, and the sages came to visit him. Amra, so Rabbi Tarfon's mother said to the sages, Hitpalelu al Rabbi Tarfon beni, shehu noheg bi kavod yoter midai. Please pray for my son Rabbi Tarfon. And she shared with them this story of how well he treats her, how we know that when a person respects or gives honor and care to their father or their mother, they merit length of days, they meant longer life. So she says to them, look how, I'll share with you how amazing he treats me, therefore you have to pray for him to be healed. Amrulei ma avidlach. So again they say, what do you mean how he treats you so well? V'tanyet lahon uvda. And she told the sages the story. אמרו לה, אפילו עושה כן 1,000 פעמים, עדיין לחצי דבר שאמרה תורה לא הגיע. And they said to her, even if he did the story you told us 1,000 times, he still doesn't come halfway close to the real work that he needs to do. Of course, the question is, in this time of illness, in the time when he needs mercy, when he needs kindness, why are they belittling his spiritual work? But of course, it's related to what we said, that because his mother was trying to say how great his spiritual work was, they had to point out, no, he needs to stay in this world. He hasn't completed his task. He needs to push himself even further, and therefore he was healed, and therefore he needs to remain in this world. And it says that they asked Rabbi Yisrael of Kozhnitz, who was sick his entire life. Rabbi Yisrael of Kozhnitz was sick his entire life, but he lived a very long life. And they asked him, how is it that you've lived so long? He said, "Hachayim nifsakim berega she'adam mesayem tafkido." When a person finishes his spiritual work and finishes his spiritual task, life ends. Ve'anochi kol eimat shesiyamti tafkidi vehigia kitzi. And I, Rabbi Yisrael of Kozhnitz said, whenever I felt that I finished my spiritual work, hayiti mekabel alai tafkidim v'yudim chadashim ba'avodat Hashem. And every time I felt that I've done a lot, I took upon myself a new responsibility, and therefore the Creator had to leave me in this world. So there's two gifts, as we said, that's available for us on the Shabbat. The gift of beginning to touch immortality by bringing equilibrium to our four elements. But more than that, as we said, at least to also start bringing in the light of immortality into everything that we have. And how is that? By focusing everything that we do more. Again, we're not meant to be yet like Pinchas, who dedicated his entire being and essence into the spiritual work of bringing the final redemption, but pushing ourselves further, knowing that only to the degree that, and only to the percent that our lives are dedicated towards bringing the final redemption, to that degree we have life in everything that, and all the blessings that we have. And again, not to be confused with spiritual work. A person could do spiritual work and not be focused towards the final redemption. You see this all the time. A person's doing the spiritual work because he or she wants this blessing or that blessing. And again, nothing wrong with using the spiritual tools to bring blessings. But to be clear that that is not the work that brings immortality. The work that brings immortality is when the individual says, and the person, two people could do the exact same thing. You could wake up this morning and connect to the Zohar. But one person's real desire, I want this reading of the Zohar, I want the light revealed through this action to bring the world closer to the end of the correction. And the second individual is thinking, I want this light to come into my life. Both of them brought some light, but this person has brought light into this world of the final redemption. But more than that, he's injected into his being and into his life the light of immortality. So all of his blessings now will last longer than the other person who simply had the consciousness and the desire to awaken light for himself through the spiritual work. And therefore the second thing we want to be awakened to is again to grow the focus of our spiritual work. The more it can be towards the final redemption, the more life we have in everything. And again, don't be fooled by spiritual work that you do. Spiritual work is not necessarily bringing to the final how many good people there are in this world, but how many of them have the consciousness that I want all of my life and all my actions to bring me the final redemption. Unfortunately, too few. And therefore, at least for those of us who understand it, to refocus, to focus stronger, everything, or at least most of what we do, to be focused towards bringing the final redemption, and remembering what the Creator said to Pinchas. You want to live forever? Then focus 100% of your time, of your being, to bringing the final redemption. Because every time Eliyahu, we know there's many stories, and we read in the Haftarah, they wanted to kill him. Every time he was about to die, the Creator said, 1 second, did he finish his task? His task is the never-ending task, until B'ezrat Hashem it ends. But as long as the final redemption didn't come, and because Eliyahu Navi was completely dedicated to that task, the Creator could never allow him to die. And therefore what we want to accept upon ourselves to a greater degree is that work. Because, and this is so amazing to think about it, if we ever came to a state where 100% of our desire and being and essence and time was focused only on bringing the final redemption, we would never die. We would never die. Briti hayta ito hachayim ve'hashalom. The gift of life is available on the Shabbat. How much we grab, how much we dedicate our lives towards the work that brings immortality, that's our choice on the Shabbat. But what's available is eternal life. Whatever degree we choose to push, to work, that's how much we will draw from it on this Shabbat. As I said, the more you can talk about this, the more you can delve into understanding this, even and then there's the practical manifestation you also want to do, but just the study of this, the speaking about this, brings that light into this world. More than that, of course, is to use these new understandings, or these understandings, to dedicate our lives towards the connections and the work that actually bring immortality. B'ezrat Hashem, we should all have the merit to push ourselves on this Shabbat, and from this Shabbat for our lives, to draw down the light of immortality for the world and for ourselves. Shabbat Shalom.